Hey everyone, how's it going? So today we're going to be doing a little bit of that review video. Let me share my screen and then we'll go ahead and get started here. So here we go. If it loads. So this is the review video. As you can see, it's many questions. So let's start with just the first part here. Those dates are wrong for the portfolio quest. I'll fix that. The right ones are up on Canvas. So it's due a week from Sunday. The Sunday after Thanksgiving. You can use a calculator, you can use any of your class materials, right? But you cannot talk to anyone or anything like that. Except for me. So what's on this Unit 2 portfolio quest? It's fractions. What do they mean? Comparing them, multiplying them, dividing them, and then decimals. So comparing them, adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing them, and then doing some estimations and then percents. That's really what it is. So it's everything fractions, decimals, and percents. That's really what it comes down to, and then everything you can do with those. So, like I said, it's like 11 pages long. And so we're going to do a couple of problems, right? From each bin. So like the first one is this like problem solving one. So we'll do one problem solving one, and then we'll go down to the addition and do one or two of those, and then do one or two of those. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me or send me your work and be like, hey, is this correct? And I'd be glad to answer it. So let's start. So I think the first one I'm going to do is number 2. Okay, so it says if 3/20ths of a bucket of Halloween candy is 30 pieces, how many pieces are in the bucket? Okay, so let's try this one. So we know that 3/20 is 30 pieces. Well, if 3/20 is 30 pieces, we should figure out what 1/20 is. So 1/20 is how many pieces? Well, 1/20 is going to be 10 pieces. And there's a couple different ways we could do that. We could divide each of these by 3, right? So if I divide by 3 and divide by 3, 3/20 divided by 3 is 1/20. And 30 divided by 3 is 10 pieces. That's one way. You could also do the area model. A bunch of different ways to do it. Okay. So 1/20 is 10 pieces. So I want to figure out what is essentially 20/20. So a bucket, right? Like the full bucket is 20/20. So to get 20/20 from 1/20, I'm going to take 1/20 and multiply it by 20. That'll give me one full bucket. So I better take 10 and multiply it by 20, which will give me 200 pieces. Okay. So one bucket is 200 pieces. Okay. It says if 4/5 of the candy is chocolate, how many are not chocolate? So I'll do it in this little box. So we're gonna assume that we have the 200 pieces. So 4/5 of the 200 pieces is chocolate. Okay, I wrote the X. Okay, which means that 1/5 is not chocolate. So I need to figure out, well, what is 1/5 of 200? Well, 1/5 of 200 is 1/5 times 200. And if we were to do 1/5 times 200, you multiply straight across, which is 200/5, which is equal to 40. So 40 pieces are not chocolate. Okay. So these are the type of problem-solving ones you could possibly see on your exam. Next up, we're going to go to some additional practice here. Okay. So we can create an area model for one of these. It doesn't matter how you do the area model. We'll do B here, so 3/5. I like to do the areas by blocks. You could do circles, it doesn't matter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I split it into 5 pieces because that's my denominator there. And I'm going to color in 3 of those 5 pieces. Okay, so that's representing the area model. Okay, explain why this is true. Multiple ways you could do it. You could say, well, 3/5 is the same thing as 3/5 times 2/2, which is 6/10. So I could get these as the same denominator and say, hey, well, 3/10 is clearly less than 6/10. That's one way. The other way is drawing an area model. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I color in 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3 of them. And then I have a box of the same size with 5. And I color in 3 of them. Right? And I can see that the one with 3 is just so much more, right? So you could stack those boxes on top of each other. There's lots of different ways to do it. Okay, so those are just 2 of the ways. You could also do like an array model. You could also write them as decimals. You could write them as percents, however you want to do it. Okay. I'm not going to do 3 because 3 is just doing 2 over and over again. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 5/12 plus 1/3. It says using fraction bars or strips and then using the standard model. So let's try it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write 1/3 a certain way. So 1/3. If I multiply that by 4/4, I get 4/12. So really, this is asking me for 5/12 plus 4/12. So here we go. 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I got 12 pieces here. So I'm going to color in 5 of them. So that's 5 of them. So I've colored in these 5, and then I'm going to color in 4 more of them. And what am I left with? Well, I've colored in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and then I've colored in 4 of them. So I have a total of 9 of them. So I have 9 colored in. And I think I accidentally drew 13 there. So that's one way to do it. The standard method is doing almost exactly what we just did, right? Doing 5/12 plus 4/12. I'm just adding straight across. So you add the numerators and the denominators are the same. Okay. So that's adding fractions. Next is multiply using an area model and then check with the standard. So the standard is just multiplying straight across, which is 2/20. And this can be reduced to 1/10. Okay, so that's the standard way. You just multiply the numerator and multiply the denominator. How are we going to do the area way? So we need to do 2/5 times 1/4. So we need to draw a box. That's our first thing. You need to draw a box. And we need to do 2/5 times 1/4. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make this a width of 5. Made it a little too big. So let's do this. So width of 5. And then I'm going to make this a height of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like so, right? So I'm going to have 2/5 times 1/4. Well, what is 2/5? Okay, well, 2/5 looks like this. So 2 out of 5 looks like this. So I've colored 2 out of the 5 columns. Okay, and then what does 1/4 look like? Well, I got to color 1 out of 4 of those rows, right? And then I look at my overlap. Okay, my overlap is exactly these two right here. So that's 2. And then how many squares did I make? Well, I made exactly 20 squares if I count them all up. So I get 2 out of 20, which is, of course, 1/10. Okay. So there you go. That's the area model for multiplying fractions. Okay. Number 6, I'll allow you to do. Number 7, I will also allow you to do. And then these are just more word problems, right? So these are just more word problems. So let's try this. So you have 18 1/8 feet of fence to use in your yard, and you give your neighbor 5.5. How many feet do you have left to use in your yard? So what this question is asking is I have 18 1/4 and I give away or I lose it. So it's subtraction, 5 1/2. And I need to figure out how to do this. Couple different ways we could do it. We could do an area model if we really want to. It'd be kind of complicated. We could also do improper fractions. So let's write these as improper fractions. So let's see, 18 times 8 is 64. Carry the 6, 144. Is that right? Yep, that's right. So you get 144 plus the 1. So that's 145 over 8 minus 11 over 2. So I could multiply top and bottom of that second fraction. I want them to have common denominators. So I multiply by 4 over 4, which gives me 44 over 8. And now I do this and get 101 over 8. So I could simplify this, right? And if I simplified this, I think I would get 8 times 12 is going to be 6, 9. So that's 96. So I'm going to have 12. I have 5 left over 8. So 12 5/8 feet. Okay. So that's how you would do one of these word problems. The fraction ones, I mean, you all just turned in the fraction quest, so I'm pretty confident with these. That's why I'm going semi quickly, is because I just saw all your work on it. So like we could do this one, right? So we can use the measuring out. We can use fraction bars, do remainders. So I actually believe you all can do this. You have your fraction quest, so I'm going to spend time on decimals, things we haven't done yet. Okay, so we need to write some of these names down, right? Remember that it starts at the tenths to the right of the decimal place, and then hundredths, and then thousandths. So this one would be 29. And then what am I at? I'm at the tenths, hundredths. So 29 hundredths. Okay, so now let's try this one. So I have 2, 2, and I could say 90 hundredths, right? But let's take a look. 90 over 100 is 9 over 10. So I will write it as 90 hundredths because that's what it says. Hundredths. But let's pretend the 0 wasn't there. Then I could write this as 2 and 9 tenths. Okay. Okay. So moving on again, right? We can do some exchanges with base 10 materials. That's something else we did. So let's try this one here. Okay. So it says a cube is a whole, a flat is 0.1, a long is 0.01, and a unit is 0.001. So if I have 417 thousandths, that means I have 4 flats, 1 long, and 7 of those cubes there, or those units. And I want to add 6 flats, 9 longs, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's try some exchanging here. So I'll do orange first. So I'm going to take all 7 of these plus 3 of these to get 10. So I'll have 10 of them, and I'm going to exchange them in. So now I have an extra long here. Okay. And now I start counting my longs. I have 1 long, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 longs, which is going to give me an extra flat here. And then how many flats do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's going to give me a cube. Okay. So what do I have now? Well, I have 1 cube, 1 flat, 1 long, and 2 units. I get 1.12. Okay, so we had to exchange every time we got back up to 10. Okay, let's move on to like 14, let's say. So 14 says 0.14 times 0.5 using fractions. Okay. So first thing we have to do is write these as a fraction. So the best way to write them as a fraction is just to say what they are. So this is 14 hundredths, and this is 5 tenths. So 14 over 100 times 5 over 10. And I can just multiply straight across. So 14 times 5 is 70. So I get 70 over 1,000. So 70 thousandths, which is equal to 0.070. 70 thousandths. Right? So we go to fractions and then we bring it back. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the estimating. I feel like we haven't done a lot of estimating. So let's do some estimating. So let's try this one. So this is 1/3 times 305, which isn't helpful for us. So we want to think of a number like, okay, what number does 3 go into that's close to 305? Well, this is about equal to 1/3 times 300. It's close, right? 305 is pretty close to 300. So this is going to be equal to 300 over 3, which is 100. So that's about 100. Okay, it's about 100. So let's try like C, for example. So 47% of 89. I don't like doing 47%. I kind of like doing 50%. And let's not do of 189 because it's easier to take half of something. That's what 50% is of an even number. So let's do of 190. So it's about 50% of a 90. So this is going to be equal to about 1/2 times 190, which is 190 over 2. So this is going to be about, if you were to do this, 95. Okay. So that's estimation. You find things that are kind of close. So this one, I'll let you all do it, but this is about 5% of 30. About 5% 30. All right, we now need to express each thing as a decimal and fraction. So let's do this. So 40%, 40%. Well, good thing about percents is you just write them out of 100. So 40% is 40 hundredths. So that's 0.40. Nice. How about 0.8%? So I'm going to write it out of 100. So that's 0.8 out of 100. Don't like decimals in my fractions. So I have to move it over. I have to move the decimal place over. So this is 8 over 1,000. Right? I had to move the decimal place over on top and bottom, which means this is 0.008, 8 thousandths. All right, 20, I believe y'all can do because we just did it up there. You change it for part C. We did part C. That's exactly what A, B, C, and D are. You're multiplying percents by these whole numbers, right? So you change the percent to a decimal or a fraction, however you want to do it, probably a fraction, and then you just multiply straight across. The other ones, let's try this one. Let's try 22. So it says identify each point on the number line as a fraction. So first off, I have to see, okay, how many little dashes do I have in between here, right? So I have 1, 2, 3. So there seems to be a dash missing here, right? Seems to be a dash missing there. So I'm going to say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? There's 5 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 spaces between 0 and 1. So I know my denominator is going to be 5. And A is at the second dash. So A is 2/5. So if I were to do 23, let's try 23. Let's do C. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know my denominator is going to be 8, which isn't super nice for us, but that's okay. And I also know, oops, I did between B and C. Let me change that. Sorry. I need to go between 1 and 2. So let's do this one. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's 10. So I know C, well, it's in between 1 and 2. So it's going to have my 1 as my mixed number. And C is at point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 and 6/10. So now my goal is to write this as a decimal. And this is equal to 1 and 6/10. So 1.6. That's how you write it as a decimal. All right, I think that's it for the review video. We did a bunch of them. If you have more questions, please let me know. I will do this one real quick, actually. So 17 over 25. We need to write it as a fraction decimal, right? Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. If you can't, you have to just long divide. If you can, it's great. So we need to write this as something over 100 or 1,000. So I'm going to multiply this by 4 over 4. And I'm going to get this as 74. Oh, sorry, 68. 68 over 100. So if I want to write this as a decimal, I get 0.68. Okay, now that's it for the review video. If you have any more questions, please feel free to email me, and I will see you all next time.